right. Big applause for you, Sheri. How are you?
Hi, Patrick. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. What a
Yeah,
what a wonderful 2-day event that you hosted and
well,
provided for us.
yeah, thank you so much. And the last time we spoke, I think we were in this format, and I feel like we should have connected sooner. But you've been busy. I've been busy. Tell me what you're working on. I've got a few points I want to cover here, but tell me what you're working on.
Yes. Oh, your timing is perfect for having me on, Patrick, because we have so many exciting updates legislatively that's happening for our industry. And right now, this week and next week, we have our industry advocates who are on the Hill virtually this year. Right now, typically, we'd all be in DC on Capitol Hill meeting with our legislators and Congress on advocating for initiatives to help promote housing in our industry. And so your summit is smack dab right in the middle of it.
Awesome. What are you learning, I guess, from that conversation? So this is happening now. So tell me what's the big takeaways here?
That's right. It's happening right now, and there are many initiatives on our ticket right now. But of course, the main issue is rental assistance, eviction moratorium, and housing affordability. So I thought that we should talk about those three main key points today.
Awesome. Is that part of the American Rescue Plan too? Are you
Yes,
pulling it all that together? Okay.
yes, it is.
Well, let's
And
begin there.
that's right. We are 1 year today. 1 year today marks when the COVID became the pandemic, and what a scramble! What a scramble it was for us. This was, well, you probably recall, we started out with the eviction moratorium in California, and then many states followed where as an industry we had to scramble to really figure out how do we help our residents who were impacted by COVID. What do we need to do to help support their rent deferrals and provide resources for them? And so that was a big issue for all of us as operators. In fact, what we had all the states except for 6 states evicted or initiated eviction moratoria, and many of those jurisdictions had multiple different restrictions in place. So combating the eviction moratorium and supporting our residents was a primary focus for us. But in speaking about the evictions, we have really been battling as a country with the mounting debt, the mounting national debt. So it's grown tens of billions of dollars and has just really been crippling for us.
Yeah, and we have some. Where are we with the benefits expiring or coming to an end? Is that being renewed? What can we expect there?
So right now, the eviction moratorium in place by the CDC is set to expire on March 31st. And the big question is, will President Biden extend it or not? So we do expect that the moratorium will be extended to June 30th. With the Biden administration and the American Rescue Plan, that calls for an extension through September 30th. But we've also heard from Democrats that mention, and along with the Low Income Housing Alliance and progressives, that there's talk about it pushing for December 31. But we expect initially the June 30th and possibly through September 30th.
Okay, so we'll have to follow along and see what that is. There's a lot of great service. I mean, you have your job to do, right? Like you have a day job, right? That you go to work and thrive at every day. Maybe you can give our viewers a little bit of perspective of what your role is inside the organization, and then because there's two parts to this: what you're doing to serve the industry and stay in tune, and then bring that information, I'm sure, back to your investors. So tell us a little bit more about how you look at this.
Okay, so what we've done as an organization is set up a lot of systems to initially it was to help residents with their rent deferrals. And now what is going to be for us is tracking the rental assistance. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. But what that does is what we need to do is track how our folks are applying for it, and then how that impacts our collections and renewals, and so on. So it's really challenging. Over the 5 states that we operate in, we have so many different ways that the states and cities are implementing the program. So we really have to stay on top of it.
Yeah, and you were mentioning the rental assistance. How does that shape out? Is that
okay? Well, for right now, just 2 hours ago, President Biden signed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. And as you know, it had passed the Senate on Saturday through what's called a special budget reconciliation process. And then it went back through the House on yesterday and just passed. But a few hours ago, President Biden signed it. And what that means is we're finally going to get the rental assistance that's been so urgently needed for folks. We have $25 billion in rental and utility assistance that's going to be included, and $10 billion in mortgage aid. Also $5 billion to tackle homelessness. So in that program will be $300 for jobless aid supplement. And that was set to expire on March 14th, which is why it was so paramount that President Biden sign this before this week. And the unemployment benefits will run through September.
That's good for collection conversation. Go ahead. I'm just making notes as you talk here.
I was just going to say another part of the rental assistance will be the $1,400 stimulus checks that will help folks who make up to $75,000. And also, we have already the $25 billion as funds approved through the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And so that will be equating to $2,000 in stimulus checks that will get issued.
So take me through the 1,400 again. Does that go to the owner? Or does it go to the
$1,400? The $1,400 stimulus checks will go directly to individuals.
Right.
And what they'll use are they'll use their tax returns. It'll be automatically distributed.
Well, I'm just trying to think of how the relief gets to the property owner in terms of the rental. I know that it's giving them a lot of these residents are further behind, right, than even those amounts. So, and then also the priority of how they use the money too, as well. So
that's right. So we have right now. The mounting rental debt is up to $60 billion right now. So even with this aid, this $25 billion in rental assistance, it's not enough for what we need. So what will happen now with the rental assistance and how it's being distributed is something that we're watching very, very closely. Congress is the intent for the relief is for housing providers to apply on behalf of the residents and to create that broad recipient eligibility. But what's happening is the assistance is going to be distributed by the Treasury to the state and local agencies. It'll funnel through cities and counties, but there's a lot of variation in how it's being administered. So housing providers are applying on behalf of the residents as long as they have resident permission. So that was the intent for the program. But what we're finding is some of the local states and agencies are not allowing housing providers to apply on the residents' behalf. And so what we're needing to ensure is that both providers and residents can apply, but that there's a broader eligibility, because there's a focus on the program is so that the money goes to the people who are impacted the most and who need it the most. So the priority is 50% of AMI, or folks that make below 50% of AMI and have been employed for 90 days. And then there's also a higher threshold of up to 80% AMI. And so we are watching it closely. What we're doing is encouraging housing providers to find out from their local, state, city, and county agencies how the money is being distributed. Get on the list, register. I know in Washington, their registrations are beginning to be open, and you have to get your community registered, and then also have the approval. You're in a bit of a in California, that's opening March 15th. Different states already have been allowing it, and others are waiting for just in the middle of the month. But the funds need to be used, and you need to apply so that you can ensure your residents are getting the assistance that they need.
That's great. And so is there guidance on that? Like how to, I mean, there's the reaching out to the local state and finding out how that money is being distributed, but who are you seeing internally that's in charge of handling this? I mean, it sounds like, you know, the Treasury Department's dispersing all this and it's going to all these different places. You talked about the variations, and then there's the approval part of it, getting the I can't remember the providers acceptance, and it seems like a web of things that have to happen. Who are you suggesting tackle this? Is it one individual at the company? Is it
actually that's a stipulation at least locally. So these agencies are really, some are more equipped than others to handle this type of an influx. So what they're doing is have one representation of your organization for your entire region or area. So each state can deal with one contact at each community or company, and then they could do a mass request for funds. So that'll help speed it up as well. They don't want to get bogged down in too many questions or different contact folks. So each person, each manager or regional manager should find out from their local agency which, you know, how the process works. There's a really, really great website that the National Low Income Housing Association has put on, and you can drill down on every state and every city on how the program is, or the status of the program. Some are still waiting for guidance, and some are already initiating the assistance program.
Yeah, the organizations, you have the NMHC and the NAA tackling a lot of these challenges. I know they've rallied around great leaders like yourself. So what is the difference between the two organizations and the disciplines, how they come together in fighting that, I guess, on behalf of owners?
Well, you know what, that's a really great question. And we have seen, especially through COVID, so many, not only industry organizations come together, but property management companies as well. And NAA and NMHC has been an excellent example of that. And they historically have partnered up on initiatives or housing initiatives and strategies for consistent messaging. And so all of our groups are working together. NAA spearheads the advocacy efforts on, through Advocate. but it's all one global housing message. And when we're speaking with members of Congress and our senators and our legislators, we definitely use the guidance from both of our leaders in housing.
Yeah, and we've got a question here, or from the audience, from Tara. She's saying the competition for a leadership position in our industry has never been, higher. I think nobody would, argue to that point. And what key takeaway as past president of the Washington Multifamily Housing Association makes you a good leader at SRG?
I love that question. It's really about having the passion for our industry. I think sometimes what we do is we sometimes lose focus of why we're even in this industry to begin with, and it's to improve housing and for all income types. So my takeaway is to get involved and to have a voice and to make a difference, and having the platform through your local association, different affordable housing groups, coalitions. We're stakeholders, right? Our residents, our clients, ourselves as operators. And so we all have to get involved. I loved it earlier. I caught a clip of you earlier telling one of the guests that we all have to make a difference every day in what we do. And it's so true as operators. It's actually a duty in my mind rather than anything else, because we're in a position to change housing and as housing providers. So that's a real privilege, and that's where the reward is when you take those steps and team up with other folks and the industry to really make a difference.
Yeah, and you're definitely passionate. How do you get passionate about legislation and those issues? Sometimes it can seem like very high detailed, in many cases slow moving, a lot of things that you got to pull together to make things happen. So what do you use to stay passionate about that?
Well, I think it's the end result of the legislation. I didn't want to have anything to do in my early career with legislation. I wanted to just be involved in all the other committees, but it wasn't until I started learning more about how much our senators and legislators need our voice. They don't know. They're counting on us to educate them. And it was when I first realized that I decided I have to really get involved and be part of that movement. And we're really facing a severe housing affordability crisis. And before, if you were to tell me housing affordability, what is, I would only think about maybe a HUD property or a low income site. And that's not the case. We have, with COVID and this financial crisis has really put such a spotlight on housing affordability. And this has been a crisis for years and years, but now it's exponentially worse because of COVID. And, each state has its own challenges. But for example, every year, Washington State alone is behind by 10,000 units. We need an extra 10,000 units annually here. In New York, it's 9,000, and in Arizona, 17,000. But California, 47,000. So that's how many units that we need to build each year. And there's so many barriers to housing that we need to overcome and work on, because it's a severe crisis.
Mm-hmm. Is the conversation happening around the technology going into making some of those changes accelerate? I know that I've spent many times at innovation conferences where the technology is there to build affordable homes and at speed and at scale, but then they get into local districts and plans get flattened, things get slowed down, and that's where we get this, we can't keep up with the numbers. Is anybody having that technology conversation around these legislative issues?
Oh, absolutely. Well, technology and how we approach new
part of affordable housing is making it affordable to build it. I mean, you look globally, and they're building properties in days, right?
In days. And tiny homes. Homes and kits. I just read an article about a really great home product that was, I believe, about $50,000 to create the tiny homes. And even if you have an opportunity to tour them, with very, very nice finishes and as far as the package, but we're not only talking about how to build quicker, less costs. Lumber is still such an issue, construction costs, but how to build quicker, but also build denser. So that's where the legislation comes in, as well as how do we think about reform, zoning reform. And one of the initiatives right now that we're speaking with our legislators on is the YIMBY Act. And that means yes in my backyard. And over the years, we've really had to combat the NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And so part of this bill is would require participants of a grant called it's called the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant. And so it would require them to do reporting annually on how they're working towards improving density to allow more high density and extend the zoning for multifamily. If you think about it, we're not living in the 50s any longer with a 1.5 acre lot sizes. We just have to think differently. We need to create more middle housing. There's something that I read recently called hyper-local zoning. And the idea was that it would be part of state and local zoning reform, but you would give local governments, streets and blocks the right to decide how much more density they would want in their neighborhood. That's an extreme example, but just thinking about how can we create more accessible dwelling units or triplex, duplex, detached accessible dwelling units, and then create that legislation to help support that.
That's fascinating. Hyper local. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I can imagine. That's like homeowners associations, isn't it? No.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, let's go back to where we are today. Do you see a certain area of concentration or one area over the other that's struggling more with sort of the benefits that are needed, or the rental assistance, or is it concentrated pretty much throughout?
No. Okay. So with this distribution, there are some challenges that we're.
Does it go equally to each state, or how is it, I guess, transferred?
No. In fact, each state has its certain allocation, but then it gets funneled down through the state to the local cities and counties. And that's where we can run into a little bit of a complication, because some of the providers are being allowed to request the funds on behalf of the residents, and other jurisdictions are not allowing that. And so that's why we're watching it very closely, because we need to utilize the funds, or then they will no longer be available. And
yeah. Okay. What's the call to action for leaders today?
Get involved. There's a really great, one great thing that's happened from COVID that's impacted legislation is the ability for you to be able to speak on behalf of our industry virtually. So before, where we would go to the Hill and meet in person, you can do that virtually. And there's also what's called voter voice. And so your local affiliate will have a government affairs director or program that can help guide you. But there's no reason why we can't all get involved. And the more volume that we have on any given topic, the more power that and more persuasive that becomes. So I would say get involved and educate yourself so that you can educate your clients, and then and your local senators and your representatives.
Yeah. Well, it's been a wealth of information. Getting involved, government affairs. I love that. So, I think it's that first step. Some people don't know that they can do it, and I love the idea that you're saying you can get involved virtually. Maybe that's the thing that activates more people, because they were, not traveling, and maybe they couldn't get out of the office.
That's right. Well, last year we had approximately 300 people that go to the Hill and participate with Advocate, and that we've already had over 900 this year participate virtually in the Advocate program. And then each state will be setting up their meetings, through this week and next week with their specific reps. So, I mean, that's very powerful. And so there's no time better than now to get involved and try to be a part of solutions for our housing affordability, and to create assistance for housing financial crisis.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great time to share together. I wish we could. I don't know that I could go all day on legislation. It's a hard topic for me because if you don't understand it, it's hard to appreciate it. And I like what you said about at first I wasn't really excited about legislative things, and I'll do all these committees, but not that. And then once you got into it, you started to learn the impact that can be made by having and stepping up to be a leader. And now you're passionate about it. So that's awesome. And I'm sure your organization can appreciate that, because you're protecting their real estate investments and all the things that they do to make their world go around. So this has been awesome. I would love to connect again, probably offline, but until then, any final thoughts you want to leave our viewers with?
Well, thanks, Patrick. I really appreciate that you have a forum to bring all of us together. And right now, that's really what we need, is strength in numbers and one unified voice. And so it's a real privilege. And I hope everyone takes a step to get involved and create change.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you. Have a great night. Thank you for showing up again for the industry. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right. Bye-bye.